Some video games become famous because they had the biggest worlds, or the deepest stories, or they just sold the most. They become legends because they captured a feeling that was impossible to forget. Like walking into an arcade during the 90s, during the late 80s often meant hearing the sounds of explosions, punches, and cheering players gathered around one cabinet after another. But there was always that one game that seemed to attract a crowd every single time. Two players stood shoulder to shoulder fighting through endless waves of enemies while trying to protect each other just as much as themselves. Every completed stage then felt earned because success depended on teamwork, timing, and learning how to survive together. In fact, that game was no other than Double Dragon 2: The Revenge. This game was originally released in arcades by Technos Japan in 1988, before receiving several home versions as well. Double Dragon 2 in fact took everything players enjoyed about the original game and refined that into one of the defining beat-em-up games of its own generation. The story opened with one of the most memorable moments in arcade history when Marion was killed by the Shadow Warriors, pushing Billy and Jimmy, these two brothers, back into the action. From there, players travel through dangerous city streets, industrial facilities, forests, helicopters, moving platforms, and the enemy's fortress while battling these increasingly dangerous opponents as well. It was simple, direct, and unforgettable because the focus was never on complicated storytelling, it was about the journey, the cooperation, and the satisfaction of fighting side by side until the very end. If you think about it, that's exactly why people still talk about this thing, or a possibility of a modern remake. There is currently, however, no official announcement that the Double Dragon 2 or 1 remake is in development. Arc System Works and other companies have continued supporting the franchise through newer entries like Double Dragon Revive, which is scheduled to bring the series back with a modern presentation, but a dedicated remake of Double Dragon 2 remains entirely speculative. Even so, longtime fans, however, continue imagining what such a project could look like because many still consider the second game the high point of that classic series. But first of all, to be honest, it isn't difficult to understand why, since the original game had an energy that still feels timeless. Like, imagine bringing the remake not with dramatic speeches or any lengthy cinematic introduction, but with just rain falling quietly over a city that has long since lost hope, neon lights and all that, ordinary people running through their homes before night completely takes over because everyone understands that once darkness arrives, the Shadow Warriors control the city. The camera then slowly moving on to Billy, and he ain't looking for trouble, he already knows it's coming. Moments later, everything changes. See, that slower introduction immediately creates an atmosphere that the original arcade hardware could only suggest through a few brief pictures. Like, instead of rushing players into combat within just seconds, the remake could allow the city itself to establish its identity. I mean, this isn't simply another collection of these levels connected together, it's a place where crime has become routine, where gangs dominate entire neighborhoods, where every fight feels like another battle in a city that desperately needs someone willing to finally stand against it. That sense of place could become one of the remake's greatest strengths. In fact, back in 1988, technical limitations meant every stage focused primarily on gameplay. However, modern hardware allows a lot of those, in fact, environments to become part of the storytelling themselves. Like, imagine walking through abandoned these subway stations covered in graffiti that quietly tells the history of gang wars stretching back years. Industrial districts continue appearing. Rooftops overlook entire neighborhoods where lights slowly disappear as fear spreads from one block to another. The city becoming more than just scenery, becoming another character instead. Combat, on the other hand, naturally remains the heart of Double Dragon, but a remake should understand exactly why the original became so memorable. Players didn't love this game because enemies appeared from both sides of the screen, they loved it because every punch carried a lot of weight. Every kick felt satisfying, every victory required paying attention instead of just randomly pressing buttons, and modern animations, of course, could elevate that feeling enormously. See, Double Dragon has always been about two brothers fighting together. Yet modern technology makes cooperation far more interesting than simply just standing beside another player. Like imagine attacks that naturally combine depending on positioning, like one brother throwing an enemy while the other one immediately follows with a flying kick. In that sense, cooperation becomes instinctive, not mechanical, whereas that philosophy perfectly reflects the relationship between Billy and Jimmy Lee. And Jimmy. The brothers themselves deserve far greater development than they originally received. The arcade games understandably kept characterization minimal because players came primarily for just action, but today's audience appreciate heroes who feel like real people without requiring endless dialogues and story scenes. Billy and Jimmy don't need lengthy speeches explaining every emotion. Their personalities should emerge naturally through conversations, body language, how they approach dangerous situations and whatnot. Rather than existing solely to motivate the story, flashbacks and quieter moments could remind players why Billy and Jimmy continue risking everything they've got. Emotional investment grows stronger when audiences understand what has actually been lost instead of just simply being told that loss occurred. The villains, by the way, deserve similar attention. The Shadow Warriors always felt larger than ordinary street gangs because they operated with military discipline rather than just chaotic violence. Now, if you think about it, a remake could expand that organization into these believable criminal networks controlling different parts of the city through specialized divisions. Some focus on smuggling, others on extortion, others functioning almost like private armies. Visually, the remake could embrace a grounded urban style instead of chasing exaggerated realism as well. Streets illuminated by just lights, heavy rain washing across factories, rooftops reaching some endless angle beneath the night sky. And don't even get me started on the soundtrack, because those games remained lovable among arcade fans because the music perfectly captured the energy of the late 80s. Anyway, community discussions surrounding Double Dragon 2 consistently reveal that many longtime fans still consider it the strongest game in the original trilogy. While newer entries continue introducing fresh ideas, players often return to the second game because its memorable pacing, cooperative gameplay, soundtrack, and the great combat. For now though, a Double Dragon 2 remake remains exactly just an idea. A possibility shared by players who believe one of gaming's greatest co-op adventures deserve another chance. No studio has officially announced development, no trailer exists, no release window has been revealed, it's just only imagination. However, if anything, it just feels even more valuable today. Modern gaming offers countless online experiences where hundreds of players compete against each other, yet surprisingly few games still capture the simple joy of just two friends sitting together. Perhaps that's exactly why the thought of a Double Dragon 2 remake refused to disappear. Not because players are chasing nostalgia, but because underneath the pixel art, the arcade cabinet, the memories of another era, lies a timeless adventure about loyalty, determination, and standing beside someone you trust when the entire world seems to be standing against you. Some classics deserve to stay exactly as they are. Others deserve the chance to remind a new generation why they became classics in the first place. Double Dragon 2 has always felt like one of those games.